Hello, and welcome to the channel. If you're familiar with my previous content, you'll know that I have covered extremely disturbing cases before. For reference, you can check out my Ed Gein and Richard Trenton Chase videos. This case is no different. What I'm going to share with you is a story that is both horrifying and true. Alison Botha was born in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, on the 22nd of September 1967. Her parents, Brian and Claire, divorced when Alison was around 10 years old, where she and her older brother would grow up with their mother. She enrolled as head girl at the Collegiate High School for Girls in 1985. After leaving, Alison travelled for 4 years before coming home to settle into work as an insurance broker. Her life, by her own admission, was pretty normal. Alison was a smart, ambitious woman and had much to look forward to, although this would all change on the 18th of December, 1994. Alison had spent the day with her friends. It was a good day. They'd been at the beach before they all returned to her home for food and conversation. At around 1 a.m, one of Alison's friends decided to go home for the night. Alison, concerned for her friend's safety walking home alone, decided to give her friend a lift to make sure she got back safe. Alison dropped her friend off without issue and headed back home. When she returned, she noticed the parking spot that she would usually use had been taken by someone else. A small annoyance, but Alison wasn't too fussed. Alison found another parking space a small distance from her home. When she pulled up, she reached into the back of her car to search for items there to bring indoors. Unbeknownst to her, a man had approached the driver's side door of her car. The man opened Alison's car door, leaned in and produced a knife. The man told Alison to move over to the passenger side, otherwise he'd kill her. Alison, with little options available to her, complied and moved over. The man got into the car and drove off with Alison. The man explained to Alison that as long as she complied with his instructions, no harm would come to her. Alison believed the man, but was also considering jumping out of the moving car and fleeing for help. However, she decided against this due to the risk of injury. He explained that he needed to borrow her car for approximately 1 hour. The reason being that someone had stolen a television from him, and that same person also owed him money. Therefore, he was going to this person's place to get back what was his. Alison begged to be let go. She told the man just to let her out and take the car, but he refused. He told Alison he wasn't interested in the car, but that he just needed to do this thing. Again, he assured Alison that everything would be fine, and that she'd be home soon. Moments later, the man seemingly identified the person that he was searching for. He pulled alongside this other man and ushered him inside Alison's car. The other man got in the car, and the first man, introducing Alison as his new friend, proceeded to drive away. Alison noted that the second man had the appearance of someone whose expressions were dead, cold, and pure evil. Alison now realised that she'd been lied to, and that her nightmare was only just beginning. Alison was driven to a secluded clearing, devoid of any streetlights. She was aware that the area she was in was not a safe place to be at night. When they pulled up, Alison asked what was going to happen next. The man told her that they planned to have sex with Alison. They asked her if she was going to put up a struggle. Alison, realising the severity of the situation, 2 men, one armed with a knife, as well as her having little knowledge of self-defence, told them that no, she wouldn't resist. The men proceeded to rape Alison one at a time. They would talk to each other throughout the ordeal. During their conversation, Alison was able to catch the names of her attackers, Frans being the man who initially carjacked her, and the second man Tians. After the men were finished, one of them began to choke Alison. She would beg them to stop, to let her live, but it wouldn't work. All she got in response was a nonchalant sorry before she lost consciousness. After strangling Alison, they then proceeded to stab her multiple times in her abdominal area. It's thought she was stabbed between 35 to 37 times. Believing that they had killed her, the men prepared to leave, but noticed Alison's leg was still twitching. Tians took the knife and began slashing at Alison's throat. Alison had regained consciousness by this time and saw the back and forth motions hack at her neck before passing out again. After stabbing her a further 17 times, the pair dumped her denim shirt beside her and fled the scene. They had made no effort to cover Alison's lifeless body. Except there was one thing the pair forgot to consider. Alison was still alive. Alison miraculously regained consciousness and, realizing the severity of her situation, had a decision to make: lay there and die, or try and find help. She chose the latter and began to crawl towards the road near the clearing. However, as she was crawling, she could feel something squidgy and damp. Alison had been disemboweled by her attackers. She could also hear a raspy sound. This sound was Alison's own breathing. Where she had been strangled, her airway had been crushed, but after being stabbed, her attacker inadvertently punctured a hole, creating a new pathway for Alison to breathe. She was now breathing through her stab wounds. As she struggled to move, Alison stated that she had multiple out-of-body experiences. Thinking she may die, she wrote her killers' names into the dirt, along with the words, "I love Mum," underneath. After packing her innards into the denim shirt her attackers left behind, Alison continued crawling. However, she realised quickly that she was getting nowhere fast. Mustering up what little strength she had, she somehow picked herself up onto her feet. But when she stood, her head fell back onto her back. She was nearly decapitated from the stab wounds to the throat. Now holding onto the denim shirt in one hand, with the other holding her head upright, Alison made her way to the nearest road. Once she got there, she collapsed, hoping someone would find her. She wouldn't wait long before seeing a car's headlights approach her, but these lights would soon fade into the night after failing to stop for Alison. Although in another stroke of luck, another car drove along the same stretch of road. This time, the car would stop. The driver, Tian Eilard, a veterinary student from Johannesburg, was on holiday in Port Elizabeth at the time. He checked Alison and saw to his amazement that she was still alive. Tian called for an ambulance and kept her conscious until they arrived. Despite being less than 20 minutes from the nearest hospital, reports vary on the time it took for emergency services to arrive. However, it's generally told as being 45 minutes to an hour, although some reports say it was as long as 2 hours. Regardless, once they arrived, they too were shocked at the scene presented to them. Alison was taken to hospital, where Dr. Alexander Angelov, one of the men tasked with keeping Alison alive, stated that in his 16 years as a medical professional, he had never seen someone with such severe injuries. Her neck had been sliced from ear to ear. She had sustained major blood loss. Before Alison's internal organs could be placed back inside her, these had to be thoroughly cleaned with a scrubbing brush and saline solution. It was also incredibly unlikely that Alison would ever be able to have children, as there were additional injuries to her pubic region. Miraculously though, not a single one of Alison's main arteries had been severed during her attack. Not only this, but the airway created by Tian's knife attack to her throat was another factor in Alison's survival, although her trachea was severed. Alison would spend 3 weeks in hospital. During this time, a tube was placed down her throat to help her breathe. During her stay, police visited her in the hopes that she would be able to identify her attackers. They brought with them a portfolio of police mugshots and asked Alison to identify the men who carried out this sick act on her. Eventually, the images of Frans and Tians appeared. Alison pointed them out to the officers. She proceeded to write their names on a piece of paper to formally identify the pair. There was an issue though. While the police were happy with the way Alison was able to identify the two men, they stated that her case would be much stronger if she was able to verbalize her accusation. Due to the tube in Alison's throat, she was unable to speak. Furthermore, doctors were reluctant to remove the tube, out of fear it would hinder Alison's recovery. Although when Alison was asked, she agreed to have the tube removed. Once it was out, she said, "My attackers were Frans and Tians." The pair were already known to police for 2 previous rape allegations, the latter of which involved a pregnant woman. They were also said to be practicing Satanists, with Frans saying that he was possessed by a demon, and it was the demon who wanted to hurt people. The pair would be arrested for the attempted murder and rape of Alison Botha. It was said that they were confused over the attempted murder allegation, as they didn't contemplate the fact that Alison may have survived. However, when it was revealed she had, they both confessed and said there was nothing they could add, as Alison would be able to tell them everything. By June 1995, Frans claimed to have had an exorcism to rid him of the demon possessing him. In August 1995, Frans Dutoit and Tians Kruger were both handed life sentences without the possibility of parole. Satanism was not considered to be a mitigating factor when the pair were handed their sentencing. Alison, unsurprisingly, was left traumatized by the entire ordeal. She struggled with severe depression and was unable to continue her work as an insurance broker. She knew her life was changed forever, but rather than continue spiraling into a depression, Alison instead chose to face her demons head-on. She began travelling the world, visiting over 30 countries, sharing her story. She would be the first South African woman to openly discuss her experience of rape and help those through her talks, giving advice to women who shared similar experiences to her. She has since become one of South Africa's most influential figures and has won various awards for her bravery. She has released a book titled I Have Life, describing her ordeal. In 2016, Alison's story would be made into a documentary/reconstruction in a movie simply titled Alison. Changes to South African law in the years since Frans and Tians were imprisoned meant that prisoners who were sentenced before 2004 could apply for parole after serving 13 years and 4 months of their sentence. This meant the pair were able to apply for parole in 2012. There's little information available, but it's known the pair were denied parole in 2012. Frans Dutoit reapplied in 2015, but his second bid also appears to have been rejected after it emerged that he was having an online relationship with an American woman. Finally, in a last act of defiance, despite doctors believing that Alison would never be able to have children of her own, since the attack, she's given birth to 2 children. Tiaan Eilard, the man who stopped to help Alison, decided instead to become a doctor and was the assisting doctor when Alison gave birth to her second child. I think it goes without saying that when it comes to inspirational people, Alison Botha should definitely be considered in that category. The story is special in its own right, not because of the horrific nature of the crime, but because of Alison's decision to take her life back into her own hands and turn her experience into a way of making others aware of their own safety, and to assure those who have had terrible experiences that they're not alone. I've left links in the description to her book and movie in case you wanted to find out more about this case for yourself. If you found today's story informative, I have an entire playlist dedicated to telling true crime stories. Please also consider subscribing, as it really helps a small channel like mine. Until next time, take care and goodbye.
For now.